What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV, aka Darth Apocalypse. And in this particular video, I want to change subjects, talk about something a little bit different here. I want to talk about the eerie similarities and coincidences in regards to Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, and John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States. Now, these are just coincidences, right? But there's so many of them that it just makes you begin to believe whether there was some phenomenon going on to make history repeat itself in such a eerie fashion. First of all, Abraham Lincoln was first elected to Congress back in 1846. John F. Kennedy was elected to Congress in 1946. Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860 with a minority of the popular vote. John F. Kennedy was elected president in 1960 with a minority of the popular vote. Both of the administrations, the Lincoln administration and the Kennedy administration, were linked to their administration's focus on civil rights. Lincoln with the eventual abolishment of slavery, Kennedy with the initial focus on initiating civil rights legislation, which didn't really see fruition until after his death. Both men, unfortunately, lost children during their administration. John F. Kennedy lost a baby in August of 1963, a male baby, if I remember correctly. Abraham Lincoln lost his son, I think it was Todd, in 1862. Both men were assassinated. Both were shot on a Friday. Both men were shot in the head. Both men were succeeded by a Southerner named Johnson. Abraham Lincoln was succeeded by his Vice President, Andrew Johnson. Kennedy was succeeded by his Vice President, Lyndon Johnson. Andrew Johnson was born in 1808. Lyndon Johnson was born in 1908. Each man's assassin had 15 letters exactly in their name. John Wilkes Booth for Lincoln, and Lee Harvey Oswald for Kennedy. Both men's assassins were killed before they could stand trial. John Wilkes Booth was, I believe, burned in a barn, it was, by law enforcement officials, or burnt out and shot. I think it's kind of fuzzy exactly what happened to him. And we all know what happened to Lee Harvey Oswald. He was shot live on television 2 days later while being transported to a different lockup facility by Jack Ruby. Lincoln was shot at a theater named Ford. Kennedy was shot in a car made by Lincoln, made by Ford, and the car was called a Lincoln. The deaths of both men ultimately led to the opposite effect of what their assassins intended. Booth thought that by shooting Lincoln, this would cause the rise of the South, which had just been defeated in this Civil War, which cost the lives of over 600,000 people. It had the opposite effect. It made Lincoln a martyr, rose to the rise, which led to the rise of the radical Republicans, who were the liberals of their day. And this led to legislation which ultimately not only led to the abolishment of slavery, but led to a period of time when African Americans were actually prospering in this country before the end of Reconstruction, which brought back Jim Crow and 100 years of misery for African Americans. But we then, after that, we had, after Lincoln was killed, we had black lawmakers being elected in the South. Black men were temporarily allowed to vote without harm or without retaliation against them for the most part, because they're under protection by federal troops in these areas, but it didn't last long. Kennedy's death led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and a wave of liberalism, which ultimately was checked by, anti-white backlash and the end of the liberal movement in the 1970s and the rise of Reagan and Nixon and all these other people. So when you look at all these things, they're just coincidences, but it's always struck me as very, very interesting, all this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Very, very interesting. By the way, Abraham Lincoln was the first president to be assassinated. Kennedy is the last president to be assassinated. And another interesting tidbit I want to put in there, I'll put in this video before I close. Between 1840 and 1980, each president that was elected in that year that ends with a zero every 20 years died in office. Until 1980, I should say. 1840, William Henry Harrison was elected president over the incumbent Martin Van Buren. He died just a month into office. Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860. We know what happened to him in 1865. James A. Garfield was elected president in 1880. He died just, I believe, was it 6 months into office after being shot? William McKinley was reelected president in 1900 in an electoral landslide. He was shot in Buffalo in 1901 and died a few days later. Warren G. Harding was elected in a landslide in 1920. He died in office in 1923. Franklin Roosevelt was elected president in 1940, reelected president in 1940. He died just 82 days into his fourth term in 1945. And then Kennedy, of course, elected in 1960, dying, of course, at age 46 after being shot in Dallas in 1963. Ronald Reagan was elected president in 1980. And some people feel like Reagan broke this curse when he was shot just a couple of months into his term, but survived. Some people think that Reagan surviving ended this curse. Anyway, this is Too Raw for TV, and let us solve a mystery.